Hey everybody, good afternoon and welcome to today's CAFETA webinar live on October 6th. For those who don't already know, CAFETA means learning in Creek. In that respect, today we'll be learning about the wonderful things that you can do with ICDBG and IHBG from Rosa McNally. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also thrilled that you could join us today for our webinar. Please follow along as I read the disclaimer aloud. The webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. Please also note our copyright infringement laws. The materials that we're presenting are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws and treaties. So just something to keep in mind. Before we get started, I want to familiarize you with some of the features available and how the environment will work. So if you look at the top of your screen, you'll see an icon of either a person with their hand raised or maybe just a hand. And with that icon, you can either raise your hand, agree, disagree, or step away. Now your screen should look similar to this graphic here. There's a box labeled web links. And that's where you're going to find our survey about today's webinar, along with any other links that'll be seen throughout today's presentation. Over to the right of that, you'll see a chat box. This is how you'll communicate with the instructor and the NLC staff. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to interact by using the chat box. You can type your message and hit enter, or click the up arrow icon button to submit. We do encourage class participation, so feel free to write in those questions or those comments. You can also submit any tech support issues that you're having here, but know that most issues could be solved by simply exiting and re-entering the meeting room. Let's all try out the chat box together now. If you could please type in your name, where you're joining us from, and your tribal affiliation. I saw that some folks were putting it into the chat in the lobby. I appreciate that. We're so thrilled to have you all here. And while y'all are introducing yourselves in the chat box, I am going to go ahead and introduce today's webinar instructor, Rosa McNally. And Rosa, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you now.
Thank you, Brooke. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here and really express to you all the joy that comes from doing ICDBG. And to give you a little bit of background about me, I'm a single mom of a son and daughter that are adults, and I'm grandmother of a wicked special grandson. And I live in northern Maine, but I have a Boston accent. So no, I wasn't raised in Massachusetts. I've never lived there, but I do have a very strong accent. I hope you're all going to be able to understand what it is I'm saying. Excuse me. My background is really pretty diverse when it comes to grant writing, and it started out about in 1995, and I was hired as an administrative assistant and didn't know the first thing about even what a grant was. And as a result, two of the executive directors that they had quit their jobs within 3 months. So there was two different executive directors in a 3-month time span. Come to find out, the grants that they were supposed to be administering were in non-compliance, severely so. And the state came up and met with the town manager and myself and was irate and said, this has to be fixed, and I'm not leaving here until you tell me who's going to fix it. Well, the town manager pointed to me and said, Rosa will do it. I was petrified. I was scared to death. But this is how I learned how to write grants, was administering what someone else had messed up. I was also just only making $6 an hour while I was doing this, absolutely no fringe benefits, and I was going through a divorce. So I was contemplating being a single mom, making $6 an hour and working for a municipality that was in big trouble with the state. But I knew that what I was going to learn, if I could learn it, was going to give me a skill set that was going to take me further. And that was a huge motivating factor for me. And it wasn't very long before other people started courting me and wanted me to go to work for them. I also held a position in Manchester, New Hampshire for a Center City project. And that was a job training and education center for homeless and immigrants. And that was a really phenomenal position. And then I came back to Maine. And since I've been back to Maine, I have been working for tribes for 21 years. And I also invested into my own personal community. I've served on town council as an elected official. I have served on our school board. I'm a board member of our local economic and community development organization. And I also volunteer for our community programs or nonprofit organizations, and I'll write grants for them for really discounted rate, and most times it's free, just because I believe in the outcomes of all of these grants that we can do. The thing that I want to explain is I learned to write grants by learning from the mistakes of others. That is how I really started out. And it wasn't because I was writing, it was because I was administering and I could see what the problems were. I learned to write grants by taking trainings. And to this day, I still take trainings. And to this day, I can still not get funded. And it hurts your ego and it's frustrating, but nobody is 100%. I'm just like you. I don't consider myself to be an expert. I'm just a regular person that has a lot of drive and a lot of ambition and a lot of curiosity. And I want to learn. And I hope that you're going to be able to learn something through this. And I've always said that even if I learn something and it makes a difference of 2 points on an application, 2 points can make that difference. It really, really can. So I'm hoping that this is going to be something that is beneficial to you. This session is going to be me going through and showing you some of the wonderful things that I've been able to be a part of with ICDBG and IHBG. We're not getting into the nitty-gritty of what the rating factors are. We're going to do that in the following sessions that we're going to be working on. And so now, in order for us to really understand the composition of who's here, who's participating, Brooke is going to go ahead and do a couple of polls, and that'll give us all an idea. So now you know who I am. Let me see who's out there. Wow. Okay. Do I speak now, Brooke, or are you going to go right on to the next one?
That's up to you, Rosa. I can jump into the next poll if you want.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sure. Looks like this one's about half and half. A little under half have never written a grant before. So y'all are in the right place. Are we ready for the next poll, Rosa?
Yeah.
You know what, Jolene, you are so right. I actually did that poll kind of funky, and I made that a yes, no, and you are so right. That should have been another. Give me 1 second, folks. This is a learning experience for everybody. Let me just fix this poll for us, and I will try that again. Thank you so much, Jolene, for pointing that out. All right, oh, here we go. Let's try that again. All right, so it looks like about 70% of y'all have a grant writer on staff. That is lovely.
Wow, yes.
Are we ready to move on to the fourth poll?
Yep.
All right, fantastic.
There.
All right, looks like maybe no tribal council members or housing commissioners today.
Right.
And last poll, folks. All right, this one's a short answer, guys. So what do you find to be the most difficult part of grant writing? All right, Rose, that's a little bit of a mixed bag there with what they find most difficult. But like I said, y'all, you are in the right place because Rosa is going to walk you through everything throughout her webinar series. All right, Rosa, I'm going to put it back to the normal screen and
Okay.
hand it off to you.
All righty. Thank you very much. This was one of the things that I wanted to know so that I could understand, and I'm really impressed that the majority of the people here are actually staff grant writers. So that's really, really impressive. So I am a staff grant writer for the tribe that I work for, the Holton Band of Maliseet Indians. But I also do consulting and write grants. And I was sure when I asked that last question, what do you find the most difficult? I was sure, absolutely, I would have bet so much on it that everybody was going to say, getting the information that you need from others. I have found that the most challenging part of being able to, exactly what the other things that you're talking about is your wording, no idea what it takes, or especially if as a consultant and you're working for a tribe, you're not familiar with the tribe, you're not familiar with their programs, you're not familiar with which staff person does what. So as a grant writer, I can know that I'm going to need a financial statement, or I need the breakdown of somebody's salary, and I've got to figure it out by a percentage of what they're going to apply for. If I send an email to the finance director or the payroll clerk and they don't get it to me, well, guess what? I'm going to be marching myself into their office and asking for it. But when you do it as a consultant, you can't do that, and you don't know who the person is. You usually have one point of contact, and if they don't get you the information, it holds you up. So again, thank you for all of this. And we're going to start going through the slides now. And again, I just want to reiterate to you that these are the wonderful things that have been done from my perspective with ICDBG. And there's one project in here for IHBG. And to just give you an idea, and one of you had put in getting started, and we're going to get into that a little bit too, as far as how imperative that pre-planning part is, that you don't have to wait until the NOFA comes out. So let's get started here. So the very first thing I say is that's key to all your projects is pre-planning. And I can tell you that I have folders on my desk or in my file on my desk that I've identified different projects. Well, how do you come up with those? Those projects are identified when you're having staff meetings or you're at a council meeting, or you're at a housing meeting and people are talking about what the need is, or you read a report that the health department put out and you say, wow, they really need this. Wow, they need a facility for this. And so you put that in there, and then if you know that the tribe is already going to prioritize that for the next funding cycle, nothing prevents you at all from starting working on that grant. The NOFA language may change a little bit in some categories the following year, but start working on it right then. I think that one of the biggest things is to do your procurement right up front with your architects and engineers. So in order to do that, I know a lot of people don't have time, they don't have the funds to be able to pay for an architect and engineer. And so what you can do though is you can do your procurement based on if they do that pre-development work for you and you've already done your procurement, you've set this out to 3 different places at least, you've published it and you get your responses, then you can figure out who you want to work with. And a lot of them, the majority of them, will work with you on your pre-application. And by that, I mean your budget is going to tell you everything that it is you need. But in a situation where you're working for a public facility or for your health center, you're going to have to be able to work with staff to understand what's going to happen in there and what does the workflow look like. You don't want to be doing this when the NOFA comes out and then you're scrambling to try to meet with the health director or the clinicians or anything like that. And then, well, then there's programs over on this side and then there's programs over on that side. And then how do we coordinate this? And what are the licenses for all of this? If you do this in advance, so ICDBG was due yesterday. Already, you can start working on your next one, especially like who wants to do that, right? But you can start working on it. Right now, I have 4 projects, and not necessarily all toward ICDBG, that I'm working with architects and engineers on. And every time I turn around, something can happen with the funding, or maybe it's not eligible for that funding, but I've got a pre-assessment already done. So you're not scrambling for 60 days, 90 days, however long it is for the NOFA to come out to now try to do all of that. So work with a qualified firm. The very first grant I wrote for the construction of a health center did not get funded, and thankfully it didn't. And this is why in your NOFA, in your narrative part, and they're saying they want to know who was qualified to put your budget together. It's somebody that understands construction. I did not understand construction, and that wasn't a requirement back when I put that application together years ago. But I did not know what I was doing at all. It shouldn't have been funded. I'm glad that it wasn't funded, but again, because we ended up with something so much better than what we were proposing. So sometimes,
quick, I'm so sorry. We have a question in the chat. Nancy is asking, what is NOFA?
Okay, NOFA is Notice of Funding Availability. So it's the announcement that the grant is coming out.
Okay, thank you so much, Rosa. She sees it. You can keep rolling. I'm so sorry to have interrupted.
No, anytime. That's fine. So that's my point, is to pre-plan. Pre-planning does not mean, and it can be done, and it's done all the time. When the NOFA comes out and you decide, oh, well, we're going to apply for this. But if it's not a priority of the tribe and you think as a housing director, okay, we're going to rehab all these units, and then the tribe says, no, you're not, we're going to build this facility, then you've put in a whole lot of time or intention into something that hasn't been determined. So get that priority out, start your planning, work with your architects and engineers. They're the experts in it. They know all the other elements in it, your electrical, your mechanical, your site laws, all of these things. The other thing that you can do with your pre-planning is your environmental. So if you have, you're going to build something new, you absolutely have to do your environmental before you can draw down funds. If you can get your environmental done on that piece of property before your application is due, you can demonstrate that in your narrative that this is already completed. that shows them that you're thinking ahead, you're committed to doing the project, and you're ready to go. Like an environmental can take, 60, 90 days, sometimes more months than that, depending on what it takes. So again, that pre-planning is so imperative. And especially once they start putting the budget together, you can look at it and say, oh my gosh, I can only apply for $1 million and this is coming out to 1.6. And I know I don't have any other funds. Where am I going to get those other funds? Or you value engineer the project right then and there instead of moving forward. So this was the situation that I was in. I don't know how many people here was writing grants back in 2009 and 2010, but that's when the stimulus grants came out. And I remember being so overwhelmed and exhausted and telling my supervisor once everything got settled that we'll never see anything like this again. Never, never. I did not know that years later COVID was going to hit and we were going to be hit with all these applications. The first grant that I was working on was an application with USDA for a multifamily unit, and it's a subsidized program, and they don't offer it anymore. But I was working with the architects and engineers on this for the design and with USDA on the application, and then all of a sudden, funds became available for stimulus. So you'll see that there's a $3 million health center, $2 million 8-unit, 2-bedroom. So it required me, so when these funding notices came out, I had to put the 515 program on hold because, oh my gosh, now we've got a chance to apply for money for the health center. So that came out through Indian Health Services. So I worked with the architect and engineer and said, hey, can we stop this and work on this one? Yep. So you're rushing. That was one of those applications, first come, first served, providing that you met all the requirements. So we got that in and we came in second in the nation, which was pretty darn good for a little tiny tribe like us. That tells you that you've got to be versatile and you've got to be able to multitask and move things around really quickly. So we got done that one and started back at the 515 again. It's like, okay, got that application and let's go back to the 515. Start working on that. Another stimulus application comes out. So we decide then that, okay, this one is going to be for an 8-unit complex. All right. So architect engineer, can you help us with that? Fortunately, they were able to do that. Get that done. We go back, start working on the 515 again to try to get it done. And then what happens? They put out the ICDBG, just a regular one. And it was like, I literally was sleeping with grants. I literally had the head of my bed was against the wall, and then I had a table on each side of my bed and at the foot of my bed. And I lived grants for that year. And so here you see that it was like, okay, shift gears. And all you could do is just keep swimming. You don't have any other choice but to keep swimming. So it took, being a grant writer it's about planning, pre-planning, being versatile, being able to move back and forth. And it's very time consuming and stressful, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And as you all know, exhausting. And so there, we finally finished the 515 USDA application, and that is exactly how I felt. I felt like I was covered in papers. And it is not a typical type of way of writing grants. Generally, you're working on 1, maybe 2 applications at a time until 10 or 15 years later when COVID hits and you're managing multiple grants and writing multiple grants at the same time. So I see that there's a lot of people in this that are grant writers. And so I'm sure that you are relating exactly to what it is I'm telling you or what I'm sharing with you to say, it's like you feel each other's pain. that's kind of the quandary I think we have with things going to virtual, is that I enjoyed going to on-site trainings and meeting other grant writers and seeing what they were doing and how they got their leverage and what they were dealing with and what their barriers were when they're trying to write the grants. But it is what it is, and we're all, I'm sick of the comment, we're all in it together, but we really are. So we definitely need some Pepto-Bismol, we need some Tums, we're going to need a wig because we pulled our hair out, and this is just about as stressful a position that you can get many times. And I hope that you're feeling the, no, I hope you're not feeling, but I hope you understand where it is I'm coming from, and that you've gone through similar things and you feel like nobody else feels your pain, but everybody is expecting you to get this funding. And it's a lot of stress on a grant writer because you're a performance-based position. It's not like you're coming in every day and doing data entry or facilitating things. You've got to be producing, and then you're comparing yourself. So this is what I was talking to you about. These are the outcomes of that pre-planning. These are the outcomes of being able to shift gears in a short amount of time, but also knowing what the needs were. It wasn't like, oh, well, what could we do with this $2 million? Oh, well, what could we do with this? It was, we had already identified that we wanted a health center. Well, this health center started out as, we were just going to do like a little modular, and look at what it is now. It's on your left on the screen. So on the far right of this is where all the administrative offices are. On the far left, that's where I applied for that last grant, the ICDBG. It wasn't a stimulus one. And that is all fitness centers. So the far end of it is like an aerobics room, and the middle room is all like weightlifting. So when you look at where the canopy is, you go straight through there all the way down. And then that's where behavioral health is on one side, and on the other side is where the clinic is. And then we'll see a little bit later where we actually did a demo clinic as well. So when I'm feeling defeated and that, oh my God, I didn't get that grant. Well, first of all, I didn't know what I was doing. You have to be able to ask questions. You have to be able to swallow your pride. But this is the result of pre-planning, and it is a result of things not going the way you wanted them to go in the first place. But how many times have you ever heard in life, whether it's grant writing or it's in your own personal life, it was a blessing in disguise? This is a blessing in disguise. And when you are doing something like this, let me give a little bit more of a background for me. So my position, my full-time job is I do a lot of planning, but then I'll write the grants, then I administer the grants. But I don't only just do the grant administration, I do the project site. So I'm not an architect or engineer, but I'm that person that goes between the architects and engineers. So I'm on site almost daily, and I can tell whether or not the contractors are there and doing their job. If there needs to be a change order, I can immediately get a hold of the architects and engineers. We discuss it. We can do a verbal approval. By the time I get back to the office, the architects and engineers have a hard copy for me to sign for it. And it speeds your process so that, okay, we can't finish this until we get a formal change order. I can't tell you how valuable that is in my position, and recommend it for anyone else if your position allows for it, because you are seeing that position from full fruition, the whole project. So it started out as a concept, right? So this project had started out 2 years earlier with a failure, but I kept working with the health director. I kept going to HUD trainings. I kept trying to figure out what it was we were supposed to be doing. I met with the architects and engineers. Then you write the grant. You know when you're writing the grant what it is you say that you're supposed to be doing. You understand what those regulations are on the other side. When you pass the grant along to someone else, let's say if you are awarded, do you have to hire somebody? What is their experience? You know, what if they got done? What if they left that position? And then somebody's supposed to be able to step in and figure out what they did and what they didn't do. Well, the advantage that we have here and an advantage that I have in my position is like, oh, now I get it. I see how all this comes together. And the other part that I get that is very touching to me, it's spiritual, is wow, when it's all done and I stand in that building all by myself and I look out those windows, I think, oh my goodness, how did I ever get to be so lucky to have a job like this? And then you almost feel panicky, like, oh my God, everybody's going to want my job. And then reality strikes in. It's like, who the heck wants to be a grant writer? Not too many of them. I can tell you that. It's so stressful. But that outcome. And so when I look at that facility, I think of how many people are going to be served there. The majority of them will never know who I am. They will never know. Very few people would have any idea of how hard it was to make that come to reality. Most people do not understand what it takes to put a grant application together. That took 3, and that took being able to start it, stop it, start it, stop it. But look at what it did, and look at how many people. And again, if you read my bio and me saying that I love this program, this is why I love ICDBG. Infants are in that center. Elders are in that center. Teenagers are in that center. Every age group receives a service in that center. That is a phenomenal thing to be able to carry in your soul. Not to stand on a soapbox, but no one can take that away from you. That experience of, wow, this is phenomenal. It is phenomenal. So then when you look at that 6th unit, okay, that was the one that gave me massive heartburn, and I still have bald spots to this day, I swear, because that's the one that we started with. And then we ended up having to keep switching around because of when the other notifications came out. But when I look at this, it's the same thing. I remember when we did the walkthrough before occupancy with the housing commissioners. And when I watched them looking at everything, when I saw them getting choked up and say how beautiful this is, how wonderful this is, and what an impact, how many families are going to be serviced, how rewarding is that? Now, I probably don't know, maybe there's 6 families in there, and I probably only know 1. They know me, but the majority do not know what it takes, who did it. They just know the tribe did it. And that is part of the blessing too, because it's not about us, but it's about that outcome of, wow, look at how beautiful this is. Look how safe this is. Look how clean this is, how modern this is. And we're not worried about health and safety standards for our tribal members. So this is the 8 unit. And this one was the $2 million one. And that was a national competition. And you had to, it was first come, first serve, right? Not that I even thought that this was going to be a possibility, but you've got to be able to throw your hat in the ring. But you also have to have enough common sense to know that your name is attached to this. Your tribe's name is attached to this. And you want to make sure that you understand what it is that you're supposed to be doing. What are those requirements? And ask. Do not be afraid to ask questions. Even for as many years as I've been doing this, I will ask a question and I just cringe because it's like, I'm just waiting for them to say, oh, for crying out loud, Rosie, you've been doing this forever. You don't know you should know the answer to this. I never get that. But even if I did, I would take it because I need to know this answer. 2 points can make a difference. Keep that in your mind. 2 points can make a difference. 2 points can make a difference on whether or not you're funded. That horrible gut feeling when you get your score review back and you were right up there, your score was right there, you were almost funded. Well, this isn't horseshoes. And so almost didn't count. And you go back and you read that scorer's review and you see that the cutoff was a 91 and you got a 90. And if you would have gotten those 2 points, you would have been funded and the 91 wouldn't have. You know, you pay attention to all those things and don't take it. I can say don't take it personally. I still take it personally. Every time I get a score review back or I read another tribe, I'll have tribes send me their grant applications that didn't get funded with their scoring sheet. And I'll read it and I'm like, what the heck? It says that right here. It says it right here. So you have to just be redundant and you have to be persistent. Just keep right at it and keep reading. Another thing that I like to do is involve the community. So again, when you're talking pre-planning, and I said, so if you're doing something with a health center or you're doing something with housing or you're building something for the youth, who are you going to involve? Whoever it is that's affecting. So I will involve that committee in the pre-planning, during the application, and then when we are awarded, they are a part of the advisory group. And they are part in the sense of, I update them, we have meetings, I let them know what's going on, but then I let them determine the colors, what are the cultural features of the facility that it is they want, because it's their building, it's their tribe, it's not mine, it's theirs. And so we have a gentleman that does stained glass, and he made this beautiful medicine wheel, stained glass, and it's in the health center. So as you come in the lobby, it's suspended from the ceiling at an angle, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. And it's something that everybody sees as soon as they come in, that everybody eyes over, and it gives him a sense of pride and ownership into his community. So this is the fitness center that I was talking to you about, and it wasn't, I haven't, if you look at the left picture and you can see a door, if you go through that door, it's all hardwood and there's no equipment in there. That is predominantly where we would do fitness classes, and they'll do drumming, we'll do dance. That is for that. And then the equipment here. And then I highly recommend, so your ICDBG grants are not going to buy your equipment. And so I don't know how many people here are familiar with USDA Rural Development, their community facilities program. I have worked with them for years, and it's a small amount of money. It's between $35,000 and $50,000. But they are absolutely phenomenal funding to be able to get equipment like this. And I'll show you further on in some of these slides, some of the other things that they've been able to fund. So while you're working or waiting for your ICDBG to be awarded, you're working on your application with USDA. So in a sense like this, the health center, everything was just coming so fast with the stimulus funding that there's no way I could get the other stimulus, the other match, the leverage with USDA, which normally if you could get that first, then that can go against your leverage. So, but by getting awarded this and already working with USDA, then the award for that fitness center part, which was $600,000, that was more than enough match for what USDA needed, or a commitment to see that this was actually taking place. We actually did get awarded. We actually were going to build it, and yes, they'd like to be a part of the process. Excuse me. The other thing I'd like to say about USDA is they really like to work with tribes. And I do believe that they even have tribal liaisons. So again, I'm presuming that we have people from all over the states, but for Maine, I know that they do really strong promoting their programs and actual on-site visitation with the tribes. And so if you're not getting that, reach out, find out who your representative is, and see what so you can go on their sites and see what they have for grants, but invite them to your tribe. Show them what it is you're doing and what it is you have, and let them see the need. And so we have invited them always to our open house, our ribbon cuttings, anything like that, especially when they have been involved in it. And then they've also, by doing that, has seen some of the needs that we've needed in other areas, so that when I call them and say, hey, I'm thinking of submitting another application, this is what it's for, it's like, oh my goodness, yes, you guys really need that. So that level of communication, it's not always just words on paper. It's just, sometimes it's about people actually seeing and knowing you, and can see that you know how to manage your projects, and that you know you're financing things correctly. So this was a fun, I guess I would like to do a poll right here. I'd like to know if anyone has done an ICDBG for more than one purpose.
Hey, Rosa, I'm creating the poll right now. I'm sorry, could you repeat what the question is?
Sure thing. Have you ever done an ICDBG for more than one purpose? Okay, thank you, Brooke.
You're welcome.
Okay, so for the 8% of you that have done it, I'm feeling your pain. This is a lot of work to be able to try to put two different purposes together. So if you look at what I'm talking about on this screen with phase 3, I did an application for the dental clinic, but then I also knew that after I'd already done 2 phases with the athletic field, we need to expand the parking. I needed to add additional bleachers and lockers. And so when you put an application together for 2 purposes, you've got to answer that criteria for both projects, but you still only have 30 pages to do it in. Again, this is where TUMS comes in. So this is phase 1. So we did phase 1 of a construction field. We got awarded that. Well, we were planning on doing a football field with a walking track around it and a baseball field. Well, when those budgets came in, when we put that out to bid, it was severely over, severely. And so we had to value engineer, and we were able to get the football field in, but the track only became a gravel walking track. But our elders had wanted this athletic field is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful spot. So it's in behind where the reservation is, and there's a river that flows right along it, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's peaceful and quiet, and so it gives them a place to be able to walk in nature without being, you can go out and walk in the reservation, but you're in a housing development. So if they wanted to be around where the birds were, the fox, the squirrels, whatever it is, and hear the river, then this was a beautiful place. So we ended up having to value engineer and only keep the football field and then the gravel walking path. And so then phase 2, we needed lights. So we got that. Phase 3, we did the dental clinic. And then for the athletic field, we expanded the parking. Well, we had no idea that it was going to be as big a thing as it was. And so when they would have games or any events, the parking went all the way through the reservation. So that became a safety hazard. And it's like, oh, we've got to do something about that. So these are good problems to have when you create something. So this is part of the dental clinic that we did. And I don't know how many people here that have written grants have done anything for your health department, but I have to strongly, strongly put a word in for our Indian Health Services. They have been phenomenal to work with. They have engineers on their staff. They want to see you succeed. They will talk about what you can do with maintenance and repairs line items. They will see if there's additional funding. And in this situation, again, ICDBG does not pay for equipment. So we in our discussions with Indian Health Services, they have a surplus inventory of all kinds of stuff that you can use, not just for dental equipment. And so we were able to get the majority of the dental equipment that we needed through Indian Health Services. I also asked on this one, so we are a really small tribe, and coming up with leverage is really, really challenging for us. We don't have gaming. We don't, what little bit of economic development we have doesn't really generate a surplus of revenue that we can apply to other things. And so literally I am scraping. I'm trying to think who's going to be involved in this. What is their salary? How many hours a week do they think they're going to work? Well, you're trying to come up with hundreds of thousands of dollars. You might be coming up with 40. And so it is incredibly stressful. And so I went back to the architects and engineers, and they've come in on their procurement, and they've done several projects with us. And I said, what can you give us? And it's like, what do you mean, what can you give us? And I wanted to know, I said, look, what can you give me for a value of something that you will do for us pro bono and attach a value to it? And they kind of looked at me with deer in the headlights, but it's like, they took me seriously because I was serious. And they actually did an additional study for us. And I can't recall right now what that study was. And the value of how they calculated it would be about $5,000. But they held true to it. They put it in writing. They did do the study, and it helped us with our leverage. So this is the athletic field. And so as you can see, we finally got the lights. You can see where the village is in the right picture there, where all the houses are. And then you come down between where those trees are. So I'll tell you a funny story about this. So again, like I told you, I manage the projects, and I'll go on site daily. And so when we were building this field, there was no road built yet. The only way I could access it was with a four-wheeler. Well, the only four-wheeler we had access to was, we used to have a police department, and we didn't have one anymore, but we still had that four-wheeler. So it's like, well, can I use that? Sure, go ahead. Well, I went down there one day, and it was when they was just starting to break ground and dig up, and I'm having a blast. I mean, who wants to be sitting in front of a computer when you can be on a four-wheeler driving around the riverbank, right? I'm having fun. I'm just driving, and I'm watching them dig up the dirt, and I'm getting all excited. And all of a sudden, I can see people jumping out of the graders and the not pickup trucks, the dump trucks and everything, and they're heading for the woods. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Well, the superintendent came up, and he started swearing at me. And I'm like, what is the problem? He's like, don't ever show up here like that again. I'm like, what'd I do wrong? And he's like, half of these guys are wanted by the law. And they saw, I didn't realize that the four-wheeler had like the police lights on it, right? And as soon as they saw that, they thought the police were after me or something, and they took off for the woods. And they said, next time I'm going to put the sirens on and the blue lights. This is a picture of our youth department. It was, so the before and the after. The before, it was a residential home, and it abutted the tribal property. And it's something the tribe always had their eye on. Again, this is in very close proximity to where the 8 unit is, and where I would literally have to drive the four-wheeler out behind this place to be able to access the athletic field. And so we were successful with an ICDBG for that. And we also leveraged our funding with that. So we had to have fire suppression hood. They needed furniture. We created it so that they could have cooking classes. And so the countertop was split level so that for the younger children that were smaller or shorter, they had a shorter level countertop. And then the ones that were in the kitchen that were passing whatever was at a higher level. We have far outgrown this facility, and we're looking at building on considerably for this. And again, it's just, there are so many projects in the pipeline that it's like, how do you prioritize what needs to be done? But this is another one of our successful projects and in a need. So when I mentioned about cultural components, fiddleheads is very indicative for our tribe. Our tribe is called Maliseets, and it means river people. And along the river, I don't know how many people are familiar with fiddleheads, so I don't want to be condescending if you already know, but for those who may not know, it's like a fern, but before it sprouts into a fern, it looks like this. It's curled up, and this is like a delicacy in a lot of places, and it's delicious, but it's very indicative for the tribal culture and how they identify their people being river people. And so again, so a lot of times with your construction, you're so limited with what you can add for cultural components. And so I met with the GC and said, hey, what can you do here? This is what I want. And he says, you want me to do what? And I said, well, this is what so I just scrolled it out on a piece of paper. I said, I want you to make me shutters that look like this. So the little white spots you see, those have been filled in. This was just what I found for a picture for now. But this is, the community was absolutely thrilled with it. And sometimes it's just a little simple thing for a symbolism that they can connect with. And it's just really rewarding. So even though we had done that health center, we had problems with the general contractor. So within, after statute of limitations, we learned that some of the applications were done incorrectly. And so we had a lot of moisture problems and damage. And so we got another grant to fix that. We also had problems with the HVAC system, which is what you're seeing is the new HVAC system that was put in, and it was much better control, but this was another great project. Community facilities. So this building right here doesn't look like much. It was built in 1990, and it is the center hub for the tribe. This is where they'll have their community meetings. This is where the kids play after school. This is where Head Start will have their graduation. This is where everybody gathers to eat when they're after they've had their celebration days. And inside, it was originally created just for like a little tiny basketball court that didn't meet regulation standards for basketball. And it had a tiny kitchen in it that would be more like for residential. And so this is also our emergency shelter. So we have generators there so that I know like we have to have like a heating center if the power goes out, and then everybody can congregate there. I know that in some of our Western tribes, they'll have cooling shelters, which I'd never heard of before, but that's one of the things you learn when you start working with tribes from different regions. And so this is what we did, and it's not a great picture predominantly because of the type of materials that's used to build it. But it got expanded by a third again the size. And then we also built, you can see that little shed there, a little garage. That is a temperature controlled building for storage and for PPE. Cultural component on this. we had, I'll put out something like design the sign challenge, right? And it's a competition. And so people will put in their designs, and then I will take the designs to council, and they won't know who created the design, and they'll select the one that they like the most, and then their sign is put up, and they'll get a little stipend for it, and then they know every time they go by there that I'm the one that did that, and it's, I don't know, it's just really touching to me. So I mentioned about USDA, and so in that building that I said that we worked, that is our community center and our emergency shelter. Well, we built a huge commercial kitchen in this too, to go from like a little tiny residential. It might have been an 8x10 room if it was that. So that now we have a huge, we have commercial stove, we have commercial freezer and cooler, we have an ice machine, we have these steam tables. So we know how imperative it is when everybody comes, and I have a whole wall on the other side of the kitchen that has nothing but outlets. So whenever people would come and they'd bring their crock pots and everybody would plug it in, then it would blow the circuit breaker and it would just never work. So we had the electrical taken care of to allow for this and to be able to provide food. So we also have a food pantry. So any food preparation or trainings that we want to have for food preparation or whatever can also be done in this facility. And this was through USDA Rural Development. So ICDBG, imminent threat, that ARP one that was, I don't know how many people here applied for that, but we applied for it to rehab an existing facility that we had to create a food pantry. We were having a problem during the peak of COVID that we had a lot of people that did not have transportation. So getting to and from a grocery store was an issue. If they had problems with needing to quarantine, how were they going to get food? If several members of the family were exposed or infected, so whoever it was that maybe would have helped them out in the past now could not help them. And it became a really big issue. And then we were having problems where, again, we're in a little small town with grocery shelves having enough food. So we immediately put this together and built, this would have been on the top level is our housing department. On the bottom level is where we had social services and ICWA. And so what we did was we moved social services up onto the upper left-hand corner. We moved ICWA into another building, and we took over the full bottom of this facility. And where that door is, that would be like the garage door. That's where our shipping and receiving is. And so let's see, where else are we going with this? So we even actually have walk-in coolers and freezers, which is huge. And we work with, I'm trying to think, Catholic Charities. There's other food programs here that help distribute food. And so now we have a place to store the food and to distribute. So when I said that people couldn't go to the grocery store, they still weren't coming to the food pantry to get the food if they weren't comfortable. We delivered. And so we set up delivery dates of when people were coming, and it was done almost like in a conveyor belt kind of a thing, so that people were still keeping their distance, but food was still being delivered to them. What a blessing. So when you're talking about cultural components, and this is kind of hard to see, but so this is in the social services part of that same building. I had a tribal member make this is all a basket weave to the left, to the right of this gentleman. And I think that if I got a hold of a OSHA, they really wouldn't think he should be standing on that bucket. So another wonderful thing that ICDBG does, and probably majority of people use it for, is rehabbing or building new housing, right? So we applied for Federal Home Loan Bank, and it was for $500,000, and we got awarded it. And so then I was going to write the grant for the ICDBG, which I think was 600,000, 700,000. I can't remember now, but so that we were combining the two projects together, we would be able to do more projects at once. Well, then the Federal Home Loan Bank called me back and said, "Hey, Rosa, guess what?" I'm like, "What?" "Well, this year we're increasing the award amount from 500,000 to 650,000. I was like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" So of course you're going to apply for that. That's another $150,000. So between the two programs, we were able to rehab 56 units. So a lot of the problems that we had with these units was moisture and mold. So they were, the drainage wasn't done correctly on the site before the houses were placed. So obviously someone didn't do a pre-assessment on that. And so water was filling in the basements. Well, then that just seeped right through everything. Of course, you only have a certain life expectancy for your shingles anyway, but then once that starts penetrating down through your walls and your windows, then you really have a problem. So we were able to fix 56 units. And this is Tule Indian River Housing Authority. This was an IHBG, and this is a result of what they were able to do with theirs. And I worked on them with their application. And this is one of the things that I do want to say is what a difference it makes. So here they are in California, and I'm in Maine, and it doesn't mean that you can't have good outcomes. The difference is that this tribe was so attentive to all details, every little bit of information, and they've got a super great maintenance guy that used to be a general contractor. And so they understood their budgets inside and out. And they can also expand their money because they've got their own force account. They've got their own people that can do a lot of the maintenance. And so it's not the maintenance, the construction. So obviously, tribes that have their own construction, it saves, you can do so much more with your project. So most tribes will end up that have their own construction crew. They'll still have to go out for bid on their mechanical, their electrical, plumbing, those sorts of things. But the actual construction, they're able to do. And when I've seen their budgets and what they can do, it's like I salivate. It's like, we need to do this. We need to do this. This is just really, really phenomenal. And they were a phenomenal tribe to work with. Just the best. And then look at what they've got. Isn't that beautiful? So here's another project. This was ICDBG competitive ARA funding. And we had already bought this hotel. And we were going to do what a lot of tribes have done, and that was going to be to convert it for transitional people that were having problems with placement, right? So a lot of people were staying in hotels, but we got to the point where hotels started not taking anybody in anymore. And so that increased our homeless population. We also had a huge problem with people being able to find a place to quarantine. So if you've got multiple generations or several people living in the same house, and if they've got shared bedrooms or whatever, it made it really, really difficult to be able to find a place to quarantine. So we decided that we were going to do this, but the funding for this one was, if you had already, if you'd never received a funding before, you were put in, you were going to get funded. And the second phase, I can't remember what that one was, but we were in the last phase because we'd already gotten the funds under this same program. They had money left over. We'd already gotten it for the food pantry. So they said, you know, you can try if you want, but it'll be third category. And it's like, yeah, well, I will pre-assess an application before I submit it. I will give the score to my supervisor or the tribal chief or whatever and say, these are the things. Do you want me to work with it? This is what I think our top score can be. Do you want us to go for this or what? And this is me being conservative. And so normally I would not have applied for this because it's like, oh, we don't stand a chance. Everybody else is going to go for this. And we're in the last possible category for this. And then how many other people are going to be in the last possible category? And then I'm that person that says, okay, by 3:00 in the afternoon, first come, first serve. I am sitting at my computer with my mouse on the button to submit for at least 15 minutes. And I'm watching the clock on my computer screen because it's like, by gosh, I'm getting that right in at 3:00. I'm getting it right in at 3:00. You've got to be competitive. And unbelievable, we actually ended up getting funded for this project. So maximize your funding. So the tribe purchased the hotel in June, and they had already obligated funds out of a reserve account to rehab it. And I said, hey, instead of you spending that money, let's see if we can get this money. All it's going to do is delay the construction, but you might get the money. And they were able, we were successful. So then we say, don't touch that dial, there's more to come. So then we applied we realized that in this center, if you're going to have people in transition or whatever, they need a place to be able to cook. They need resources. So this is not on the reservation. So from where the tribal housing is to where this is probably 3 or 4 miles. And so we decided that, and when I say we, I'm including myself because I'm helping with the planning. So this takes all of us working together. Everybody, whoever's working with vocational rehabilitation or people that social services or Indian child welfare or the health department and what they're trying to set up with vaccinations or how do we make referrals for behavioral health. So when I say I or we, it's that please understand that this is a coordination of way back when I said at the beginning of this, that pre-planning, who's involved in this? Who's going to be providing services? Well, we're going to have the food pantry. They're going to be bringing food there for everybody. If we get that program for the food distribution center, we can be helping with that too. And we can be doing the cooking classes there. Okay, well, we can set up little computer labs in there so that they have referrals to where some of the services are and that we will bring a navigator into them. Obviously, they're probably not going to have transportation. And so this is in the same yard as the hotel itself. And so we said, well, let's try it and see.
To a YouTube channel near you.
I love stuff like that. It's fun. So I have this in my office. This is a $sign bank and a sign that says work for it. And it's a reminder to me, I was always taught to work hard. I was taught to be competitive and to always do my best. But doing your best and investing in it or just doing something haphazardly can make a really big difference. And this is a reminder to me and to you and to anybody that this does take a lot of hard work and you do need to invest yourself in it. It's not just gonna happen. So you are going to be typing, typing, typing. As a matter of fact, the other day, my colleague came in my office, and this was exactly what it sounded like. And I was so exhausted and my head was so full. And I turned around to look at him while I was typing. And he looked at me and he laughed. He said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I have no idea what I'm typing right now." So I love to have fun. And I'm going to tease and haunt every single person that I can. I love it if somebody's new and they don't know me. And then that's the element of surprise, right? It's like once they get used to you, then it's like, yeah, I got you, Rosa. But so my vehicle is the one to the right. And I call it my big truck. And I make everybody call it my big truck. It is not a MINIVAN. It is not. It is a big truck. And so this little guy here, he's not very little in comparison to me. Of course, look at what he's driving, right? And I said, well, we're both project managers. I said, we need to have our pictures taken with our big truck. Oh, yeah, I got a big truck. So that's about where I'm at. And if you want to reach out to me, if you would like clarification, I am available, and I wish you great success. And know that we're in this together. I am sure that there isn't one person in here that I couldn't learn from. And so never elevate people above yourself, and don't put yourself below anybody, and just know that we're all in this and we're all learning, and be so grateful for the things and the contributions that you are making to so many people. I guess that's it for me, Brooke.
Rosa, we have a question from Nancy in the chat. She's asking if you ever have time to socialize, because you seem to be a go, go, go type of person.
I'm actually going to Nashville next month, and I'll tell you right now, I'm saving money for bail.
Oh, gosh. All right, you guys, continue to send in those questions or comments to Rosa in the chat. In the meantime, I'm just going to close out the presentation. Richard's asking, can you put your contact info? So Rosa, is it okay if I share your email in the chat?
Absolutely.
All right, fantastic. And then folks, I'm going to go ahead and launch today's survey, the feedback survey for the webinar. So we hope that you can take a moment to complete the survey. It only takes a minute or so, and your feedback really helps us to do more of what's working well and to improve upon what needs it. We do invite you to be as candid as possible. The survey is anonymous, and you're going to answer some things just kind of about like our webinars and the system, as well as some more questions that are specifically about Rosa's presentation. So just take a minute to fill that in for us, please, because it really does help in the long run. And I've already launched it for you, but there is the link there. It's also the first link in our web links pod. And I hope y'all will join us for our next webinar, which we're kind of going all over the place with times this quarter. But this next one is actually happening on Monday. And this one is going to be at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So I know for a lot of you, that might be a little too early in your time zone. So just a friendly reminder that we do post our recordings. So if 10 a.m. Eastern time is way too early for you, you can always access the recording later on. But this one is going to be another grants training, and this is going to be about how you can think like a grant reviewer. I hope you will also come back on Friday the 13th, because that is going to be our next Friday with Rosa. So like I said before, she's going to take you through the entire process. She'll get into the nitty gritty. So we hope that you'll come back for the next one. And again, that's going to be on Friday the 13th.
No bad luck.
But no bad luck. It's going to be good luck this time. Exactly. Right. But feel free to access this and any of our other recorded webinars online on our website, nativelearningcenter.com. We have a Catheta webinars tab that has a recorded webinars section. So you could click on any of the webinars that we've done for the past 2 years. So feel free to view those and share them with your colleagues. And also please check out our upcoming events that are posted to our various social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, And we even have a podcast titled Hope a Thing, a Native American Podcast, where we discuss focused topics within tribal housing and self-determination. So you could listen to that on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You could also view the recordings where we have our guests on YouTube. And then once again, I hope that everybody has a fantastic rest of the day. Everybody enjoy your weekend, and we hope to connect with y'all real soon. Rosa, I'm going to go ahead and shut off the recording.